Thanks, Mike. Does everyone know who Rezonence are? A few of you? Some of you, not everyone. Well, Rezonence is set up to fund open access journalism, but ensure it's well funded. Mark talked about the Cairncross review. I've been consulting with Dame Frances Cairncross on that, contributing on what the government does to fund open access journalism in a world where there is no more print. And every time a print reader stops buying a print paper, that same magazine or newspaper needs 350 new digital readers to sustain the drop-off. So as you can tell, that's probably not sustainable in the UK, and it is a real issue that unfortunately not enough people really know about. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about trust and whether people understand or not. So this is a bit of fun, and it's actually really nicely timed because I got a couple of our grads to go and run a project where I wanted them to learn how to go and talk to random strangers. And so they have gone and spoken to 50 random strangers around Covent Garden and Leicester Square in the area, asking what they understand of the world of media. So bear that in mind, and we're going to have a bit of fun with this. The Earth was flat, wasn't it? And then we suddenly found out it wasn't. When it was flat, you'd obviously make decisions about not sailing to the end of the world because that would be the end of your life. And suddenly Christopher Columbus finds America. The Earth was the center of the universe and the sun rotated around it until it wasn't. And again, all the decisions that were being made by philosophers, by scientists, based on the world being at the center of the universe, entirely meant things like the Big Bang couldn't exist. So we're making decisions and plans based on wrong perceptions because we didn't truly understand. Evolution, until evolution came along, the world was made in 7 days and we were a truly unique specialist being until we found out that in fact we were related to monkeys, apes and the likes. Until I set up Rezonence, I was an investment banker at Citigroup, possibly the most hated industry in the world until this year when media I think is catching up with the likes of Cambridge Analytica and Facebook. But 5-6 years ago I really didn't tell people what I was getting up to because it wasn't socially acceptable. Now, how much do you trust bankers? How much do you understand about these products on the screen? Many of them from stocks, you'll be pretty clear on, but shorts and futures, everyone has a pretty good idea about. TRS, probably not. What a margin call genuinely is. And there's a lack of trust in what it is. But we all assume in the media industry that everyone gets it. Everyone gets there as a value exchange, a triangle of trust between our advertisers who fund the internet, the media owners who get paid for producing great content, and the consumers who engage with ads to access this free content. Unfortunately, that's probably not as well understood as we'd like to think, resulting in ad budgets pushing prices down on publishers, resulting in more and more ads being put on publisher pages to try and fund the internet. And ultimately, consumers end up downloading ad blockers or resenting editorial media for the clutter. And actually, if you visit most of the premium sites, not the ones that Mark was bringing up earlier, but they say there's tier 2 national papers, they'll probably have up to 5 or 6 videos on the screen at any one time playing. They'll have multiple rich media flashing, jumping, they'll have Taboola and Outbrain. So effectively, 75% of the real estate is ads and 25% is editorial. 75% of the data used on your mobile phone is to load the ads, and again, 25% will be for the CMS. And that varies from site to site. So no wonder consumers are feeling a bit hard done by. It's not the publisher's fault. They need to make money. If you're not prepared to pay, they need to find another way to fund their existence. So here's the fun bit. How much do the public truly understand about what we do? So if you can get your phones out and type into the Safari or your Google browser pollev.com/resonance FRE891. I'm going to get your opinions, and if this doesn't work, I will A, blame Emma at the back of the room, and B, we will do a show of hands, but it normally does work. But I want to see how much you think the public truly understand about what they are doing when they are using the internet and how they think they're paying for it. And once you've done it, please look up so I can gauge when you're all done. And furthermore, there are 2 prizes to be given out for best answers later on. So bear in mind, A, this is anonymous so I won't know, but if you show me your hand when I call out your answer, we have some very cool almost Donald Trump baseball caps, but instead of making America great again, we're going to make publishing great again, which is obviously a hugely important agenda for the IAB, for Rezonence, for Smartology, and for us as consumers. So, first question, how's the content on this website funded? As you can see, there are, to us it may be very obvious. We've already got one video playing, we've got a skin and the likes. So, can you vote on whether answer A, B, C or D, on whether advertising, this is what the consumers said, whether it's advertising, whether it's funded by the government, whether it's through my broadband or mobile phone contract that I'm paying for these services, or they just really don't know. There was a real surge of people believing that they understand it was advertising, and that got up to 80–90%. I was very impressed. Okay, so we all think that over 50% of people know it's advertising, and then it's don't know, and then the government.
Who do you think pays for this content?
I have no idea.
I reckon some might be, might not be advertisement.
Who do you
I feel
think
like
would?
you see like the public, like something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it.
So you'll be pleased to know that the majority kind of knew, but actually there's still a third of people didn't understand that advertising is funding our access to the internet. And a third doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're in central London talking what we believe to the well-educated, the London bubble as we all like to talk about, that is a terrifyingly low number. This piece of content, we actually gave them the full version so they could read it. For your benefit, there is a promoted content in the top right-hand corner for Costa Rica. It was written by, I forget, but it'll come up. It was written by Chris Moss on the Times. So what do you think people said about who was paying for this content to be written? Again, you're incredibly optimistic that the government of Costa Rica is, the consumers are going to understand what sponsored content is. So I like it, 56%. Central London.
And who's written this content?
The Times.
So if you missed that, it was, she said the Times paid for it. And actually overall, very few people understood that this was an ad. And 75% assumed it was editorial, either paid for by Chris Moss, the Times, or that they didn't understand the business model. So again, central London, talking to lots of London bubble people, and there is still a huge misunderstanding of how media is funded and what type of things are an advert and what type of things are editorial. That may be to the benefit of the advertiser in this scenario, but it really does bring into question that concept that people truly understand what we're doing. And, I remind you, I was an investment banker and we knew no one understood what we were doing, whereas you guys do assume that they do understand. This is excellent. You're going to get it wrong, so don't worry about it, but you're going to get this so wrong, it's excellent. How much does it cost to put an ad on a page? Oh, we've given the answer there already. 83% of people have said less than £1. So this is one ad. This isn't 1,000 impressions. This is one ad impression on a page. So you probably have to divide your numbers significantly. But again, very generous, assuming that people have an assumption that they get the CPM concept.
How much do you reckon each one of these adverts on the page pays to the publisher?
A lot of money for this one. I'm thinking tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands of pounds for one banner. It's a highly viewable banner. Now let's be clear on that, and to Mark's point, that is tremendously valuable, but tens of thousands of pounds for one banner. So if you think they've got 5 video ads on any one page, they've got 6 to 12, they must be minted, these guys, because the amount of money they're making. We're almost being selfish by the daylight robbery of this industry. So again, 50 people came across, most people didn't know. Very few people actually understood how little money goes into the publishing ecosystem. And we all know that amount is probably more like 0.01p or 0.1p for one impression. Most CPMs are on a £2 to £5 CPM, again, not Mark's premium tier, that's going to be £20, £30 CPM, if not more. But a lot of the programmatic national newspaper inventory is £2 to £5. So that is, at best, 0.2 to 0.5p. People sit there thinking this is in the thousands of pounds, in the hundreds of pounds. This is an interesting one, and actually it's one that a lot of our industry doesn't necessarily get. So let me answer for yourself what you think makes more money. Because there aren't actually that many ads visible on Facebook and the likes. But the sad state of affairs is that Facebook makes $20 per reader per year. You compare that with the national newspapers in this country whose open access business model provides them 50p per reader per year. So whilst the Mail Online may have 250 million readers worldwide, it actually only makes £130 million. Compare that to its print newspaper, which has 1 million readers, and it makes over £500 million in print. It just shows that whilst there was a wonderful print business model for journalism, it doesn't currently exist in digital. And the paywall isn't something we need or want, but it is something they may have to do to survive. And that has a real impact on what society, democracy, and overall freedom of information has on us.
And who do you think makes more money per user? People like Facebook and Twitter, or the big newspapers like the Mail Online or the Mirror?
Ooh, interesting. I'd like to know actually.
So a lot of the feedback we got on these questions was, I've never even considered that. I've never even thought about that. That is a question that I never had to think about. So people are using a service without even considering how they are paying for this service. Here's a bit of fun. Can you name any services that you pay for with your data instead of money? Guys, shoot out answers, type them in, and as long as you don't say anything inappropriate, because I haven't paid for the auditing process. I want a real rogue one to win a cap. So Spotify is an interesting one. They have only 15 to 20% of its audience are actually paying for the monthly subscription. Most people are in the free space. And it's actually one of the biggest challenges the IPO set was proving they could convert people to subscribing. But unfortunately, a lot of research by the likes of Deloitte have shown that people will pay for 2 sets of digital services. And that includes Amazon Prime, Netflix, maybe a news subscription, maybe Spotify, maybe Hulu. So as a result, the odds on Spotify winning that market when there are free to use services makes it much harder. And again, that puts even more pressure on the newspaper industry. I tried to IPO the Mail Online at Citigroup, and we worked out that less than 1% of the then 30 million audience would pay. So it didn't have a long-term business model behind a paywall either. So who said email? That's an awesome answer. People always forget that, of the value of email, and actually the amount of data that Google has now admitted to, it's been tracking through all of our use. It is now turning that off, but it's one that we've been simply using email as a service without considering what we're paying for, and our emails have been read and the data used to then retarget us with later. Who said, no, the others are all too easy. I'm not going to give you anything there.
Can you name any services that people would pay for with data rather than money?
No.
This is just not something people have ever considered. And we are sitting there buying these services, assuming the consumer truly understands what we are selling. So there are 3 different ways to pay for things, as we all know. You can pay with your wallet. You can pay with your attention, such as pre-roll video is an obvious one. And as we've discussed, you can pay with your own data.
And do you know the 3 different ways of paying for services online?
Like hits, like hits.
Website hits, I think she's trying to say.
Subscribing.
Paywall.
The 3.
Can't name them all, that doesn't matter.
This is the one you're waiting for.
Actually paying, like choosing to buy Bitcoins and
Obviously
things like
Bitcoin. That has got to be the answer for everything.
Kid gets hold of mum's credit card and spends too much on the gaming.
Bitcoin gaming, clearly how it is all done. So that concept that data and human attention are transactions is clearly not well understood by audiences. So if you read the news for free online, are you aware that it's advertising that pays for the pages? This is something that consumers kind of get, but is it something they truly understand? Based on what you've seen so far, you're probably in the realms of never really thought about it. I love the optimism that they're still yes is the preferred answer. No, it's gone. It is gone. So you'll be pleased to know that actually 2/3 did understand that you can pay for this, that advertising is funding this. But it still means in the central London bubble, 1/3 of the people we spoke to didn't understand or never even considered it. So this is in our hands, and Mark was touching upon this earlier, and I completely agree. There needs to be transparency and clarity on how these services are being paid for. There needs to be a clear value exchange where the consumers actually understand this. We at Rezonence ask consumers 2 paragraphs into an article. If they want to continue reading, there is a message from the publisher saying, please answer this question to pay for your access. There is then clearly an ad, similar to a TV break. It is a clear break in the content. And before you can continue reading, you simply need to answer that question. That pays for that consumer's access to that site for an entire week through one engagement. And the sad state of affairs is it will actually deliver them 20x what they're currently making from all display ads on the site, to the extent where we're now talking to publishers about removing every ad off the page other than Taboola and just serving one free wall once a week to a consumer and no other ads. And when I sat down with Dame Frances Cancross, her first question was, you guys have already proven you can do it. How close are you to being able to fund the entire UK ecosystem? Unfortunately, I'm a UK startup 4 years into my journey, and I'm not ready yet to be able to fund the Mail Online, reach all the regional newspapers, all the hundreds of magazines and newspapers we consume. But that is the journey we are on to help fund quality, open access journalism. And to Mark's point, we've all seen the film Spotlight, which is a film about how the Boston Globe uncovered a Catholic church child molestation cover-up. That team is a real team. They had in the early noughties a team of 12 investigative journalisms working on one story every 3 to 6 months. That team is now halved, and they now need to produce 3 to 5 stories every quarter because of the requirement to deliver on a service. Investigative journalism takes time. If you reduce the time, the level of depth that can be done is reduced. And you know, The Guardian has tried this model of asking for contributions, and if you speak to David, he's cut enough costs that he thinks it's sustainable. But actually over 3/4 of the people that have given money to The Guardian, that's either on one-off donations or the print paper, of which they still have 150,000 readers. Unfortunately, in 3 to 5 years' time, the print will not exist. David has announced he will cancel that paper in due course because it's becoming unprofitable. Then you're sitting there with the vast majority of your financial revenue being one-off donations, kind of like when you have to get a Top of the Pops hit. They will then have to search to do winning stories because it's only the winning stories that people will do the one-off donations for. So they do not have a sustainable digital business model. And I believe that if they did, only The Guardian, which is a trust, could actually ask for donations, because none of us are going to donate to a public company who is making profit for its shareholders. So I believe this is a responsibility of the whole room. It is the vendors, it is the publishers who have actually been quite shy on this topic. They need to come out and start stating they need to make money. And the advertisers need to acknowledge that unless they only want to advertise with Google and Facebook, they need to start using editorial media, because otherwise they will lose editorial media and there will only be 2 games in town, Facebook or Google, which is a world that some people may want. And I think both services are wonderful, but I kind of think journalism matters and is needed for a wider issue than just advertisers. We need it to keep democracy held to account, because all of us can vote, but if only some of us can access true information, the rest of us will be reading genuinely fake news put out by people to manipulate our thoughts because there isn't an editorial desk alive. So to put this back together, we need all of you guys to start investing as much as you can directly with publishers or people who have direct relationships with publishers, because otherwise this ecosystem will not last for much longer. Thank you very much.